All right. Let's get this shit started. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignorance of Strength podcast. Hope you all enjoyed the previous episode, but I'm back today with a brand new guest. And I want to welcome to the podcast for the very first time, Master Daniel Pesina. How you doing, man?
Hey, pretty good, pretty good. How's it going over there?
Really good. So you're in Chicago, right? Or
Yeah, yeah,
all right.
uh,
So time difference
yeah,
isn't too bad for us today. I've talked to people from all over the place, and it's like, well, how many hours ahead are you over there? So at least our
yeah.
timing matched up.
Yeah. That could be difficult, but at least we're in the same country. Sometimes get
Uh-huh.
interviews from over different countries, and that the language barrier.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that man. I remember I was trying to schedule somebody in Asia, and it's like it's a different day over there.
Yeah, yeah,
you know. But yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you today, man, because I'm big about 90s nostalgia. That's when I grew up, right? I was I was born in the 80s, but I'm a 90s kid, everything 90s is coming back in style now, it seems. And so I think you've been pretty busy doing the conventions and meet and greets and things like that, right?
yeah. I'm very retro.
And there's a good reason for that, right? Because even just now, us interacting on a screen, I'm like, man, immediately I'm like, that's Johnny Cage.
Yeah, yeah. I did. I portrayed, well, not only portrayed, I developed the character Johnny Cage, uh, concept creator of Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and
Mhm.
also created those characters. So from the original Mortal Kombat franchise.
And that's something I wanted to touch on. Obviously not the whole interview. I want to hear a lot about everything else you got going on, but that was my first big like, whoa, that's so cool. Because that was one of my favorite games. I loved like Street Fighter and all that stuff, but Mortal Kombat was like that was more my style. It just appealed to me more, specifically Mortal Kombat 2. But and I was researching and reading about that and everything, and Mortal Kombat 3, there's no more Johnny Cage, right? At that point, and I was reading about how contracts and things were structured and whatnot, and that's unfortunate, because what you all built was like magic, man, and then to change it up, it kind of sucked, especially for kids playing the games too as well. So talk to me a little bit about how that was all developed and whatnot. And I noticed that y'all still hang out as well. I was watching your live video of you and some of the other Mortal Kombat guys in the arcade, and I'm like, that's really cool to see.
Yeah, yeah. What happened was, you know, when I was younger, man, even still now, I collected comic books, went to anime,
Mm,
all around geek. But I'm a geek who studied martial arts,
mm,
happened to study martial arts. So there was four of us who got together: John Tobias, myself, my brother Carlos, and Rich DeVizio, who's Kano. We got together and we made a proof of concept package for a game. Uh, I was always a fan of Street Fighter,
mm.
but my thing with Street Fighter was the techniques. Even though it's drawn, the techniques, like I was like, nobody actually kicks or punches like that. They're not efficient. They're not real.
Uh-huh.
And I always thought it would be cool to make a video game that like had real fighting and real people in there. And actually, John Tobias came up with that idea, and he approached me. He's like, "Hey, man, I want to do this. I want to do a live video game." And he goes, "Will you help me create this? Create this game?" And I was like, "Sure. What do we got to do?" He's like, "First, we got to put together a package and show that it can be created." So we put together some drawings and some videotape of. I put together some choreography and some martial art moves, and we took this package and we presented it to this game company uh, that John was working at, Midway Games.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm going to turn this phone off.
Uh-huh.
Um, so, uh, so all of a sudden they're like, "Hey." John was like, they like the idea. They like the idea of a fighting game, and they're going to send a representative to meet with us to hear more about the game. And so he's like, get together any idea to really pitch this game. I want to make this game work. So that's when I was just like, we were getting together, ideas trying to, man, we had so many ideas. We wanted tag teams. We wanted x-rays in the game. We already had the idea of blood in the game with our presentation. So I was just like, you know what, John, we should change the Japanese ninja into the Lin Kuei. And he was like, what is that? And I was like, the Lin Kuei is like this Chinese ninja that involves mysticism and magic. And that way we could have this magical lore in there and make the game kind of mysterious.
Mhm.
And then we could change the shape of the ninja to not look like the Japanese ninja and basically what they look like today. So we presented, so they sent a programmer to meet with us. The programmer was Ed Boon.
Yeah.
So we sat in front of Ed Boon and pitched this idea. And when the meeting was over, he said no. He didn't think it would. He didn't think it would make money, but it's rightfully so. He's got to watch out for the company.
Mm-hmm.
So we were nobodies. So he was just like, nah, I don't think you guys have it. I don't think this type of game would make any money. And then so our game got canceled. But John later on told me, he was like, you know what? They like the idea of a fighting game, so they're going to do a fighting game with Jean-Claude Van Damme. That's a different option.
Heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, so they basically took our idea and watered it down into Jean-Claude Van Damme idea. But that didn't work out, and later on, John was like, hey, that didn't work out. They want us to do our game.
Mm-hmm.
So John and I got together, and we started creating Mortal Kombat.
Nice. And you mentioned the real, techniques and everything. That uppercut, is pretty iconic.
Yeah.
And it's one of the coolest uppercuts in a video game. Like you just feel real good, like crouching down and then, right. And a lot of the other techniques too, like you said, they're pretty realistic. As opposed to like you're playing Street Fighter and you're doing like Guile's hanging upside down kick, right?
Yeah. The uppercut is like a very standard technique for Northwestern Chinese styles. Northwestern Chinese styles are really, really old styles. They're older than Shaolin. So they're a lot of the styles are created BC. So before Christ. So, but that particular uppercut is designed to do with armor. So what happens is you crouch down because you start at the bladder, and because you're wearing studded leather, you scrape upward.
Oh,
so that's why the motion is really big. So you're striking up and it's dragging through a person's body all the way up because you have armor on. So that's where that's when I did that technique, I was like, there's an uppercut like this in this particular style that I love. And so, we were just recording everything. And that's one of the things we kept.
mm-hmm.
So when you look at the game, there's so many little things like you're like, oh man, there's a little bit of history behind every technique.
Well, that's pretty brutal, and that's cool, man. I like that. Now, were y'all, you and all the other guys that were putting it together, y'all grew up together or something like that? Did you all train together? Where did you all gather up and have this idea? You mentioned you all had the video game idea, right? But you must have been like friends or training partners before that. How did that come to be?
Yeah. John Tobias and my brother used to hang out and draw together art, like at my parents' kitchen table. They kind of would congregate together, and I would kind of watch them draw. And because also I'm older than them, but I was still a geek, so we would like go. I remember one time because I had a car. We'd pile in my car and go see Ralph Bakashi's Lord of the Rings, the rotoscope one. So I remember us doing that, or sometimes we'd go to, again, I have a car, so we go to anime convention together. So we knew each other at least, man, I would say at least 4 or 5 years before Mortal Kombat.
Okay. Yeah. And you could tell that camaraderie is still strong, man. Like I said, I was watching your live video on Instagram. I'm like, wait, that's Liu Kang. Wait, that's Kano. Wait, I think that's Raiden,
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see now. Because you mentioned being kind of like, hey, I was like the nerd kid, right? Who's really into this cool stuff, right? Well, all the nerd kids want to see all y'all together,
Yeah. I still talk to everyone at least couple times a week,
Mm-hmm.
from everyone from 1 and 2. So
Mm-hmm.
we're still kind of tight, check up on each other or just kind of hang out. Uh, yeah, just try to keep in touch.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's like, I my friends from my high school wrestling days, like we still keep in touch. We're still, friends, and at the drop of a hat, we'll go and pick up like we never stopped. you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, man, yeah, if you catch us at a convention, you're going to be like, oh my God, those guys are like hilarious.
uh-huh.
Two, if you ever see us at a convention, you will see, you know, when we were creating the characters, we would just, we, we didn't have any guidance. There was no like, when on the first day of the set, John told me do something cool. So
Mm,
that was the guidance I had, to create the characters. So really, and especially with the first game, all the characters their personalities are actually like the personalities of the actors. Like
okay.
if you hang out with Rich DeVizio, you're gonna be like, oh my God, he's like Kano.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, because that's his personality. He's that type of personality.
Hmm.
Or Raiden or Liu Kang, or you know what I mean? Or even
Hmm.
Sonya, you're gonna see that snarky personality in them.
Well, with that being said, Daniel, I got to ask you then, man, how did you come up with the nut shot?
Actually, the nut shot came almost last. What happened was, man, it's a funny story because we were almost done with it,
Mhm.
and then John is like, "Hey, can we do a parody of a one move parody of Jean Claude Van Damme?" And I
Mhm.
was like, "No, John, I'm not going to do that because originally we modeled uh, Johnny Cage after Daniel Red, Iron Fist. That's who
Okay.
we really modeled the character off. I know people are like Jean Claude Van Damme, but that's not. That's like a corporate story.
Mhm.
But when we were creating the game, that in the creation that never came up.
Mm.
So, but the one move was John's like, come on, do it, and I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And I was like, no, I like the way this is going right now. We're not going to do that. And then John was like, I'll buy you a pizza, and I was like, what? Because they weren't paying much. Like during
Right.
the during the first creation, when John and I were creating the game, we were the only two creating the game. I didn't get paid for that. The first
Mhm.
6 months, I didn't make any money on it. I never got paid for creating that the 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 base of Mortal Kombat, the
Mhm.
base of all the characters. They never paid me for that.
Mhm.
So it was like so when he offered a pizza, I was like, oh man, yeah, hell yeah, that's something free. They're gonna feed me. So I was like, okay. But I wound up doing the splits like 70 times different ways.
Oh.
Because what happened was the whole process was to do a technique and then for the character just to change it after do it like 5 or 6 times, then change it slightly and just keep on doing that until we had enough ideas about what we can need to pick to see what would fit in.
Mhm.
So the first game I would say has over 1,000 video hours.
Mm.
So what you see on the internet right now, I have 7.5 hours left of videotape. If you see the making of Mortal Kombat, I posted all that stuff,
Mhm.
but I only posted maybe 45 minutes. So I've got at least 6.5 hours more that
Oh,
that people have never seen.
that's
That
crazy.
that's very, very yeah, that people probably won't ever see
Mm.
just because that Warner Brothers doesn't like me to post stuff. Ed and Ed, who's in charge, doesn't like me to kind of post that stuff,
Mhm.
like to keep it, eh, for whatever reason, the IP.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah, but
you
yeah, but yeah,
mentioned,
we got over 1,000 hours.
yeah, that's a lot of behind the scenes. Now, you mentioned, not getting paid, not getting compensated correctly. And I was reading, it was like a really low hourly rate for that stuff, right? And then the game became such a success, right? And then after, I believe what I was reading was after two, you're like, hey, can we renegotiate this, right? Can we look at this again? Because
There was no renegotiating. Originally, when I signed up, because it was a small project, John and Ed promised me there'll be 200 arcade cabinets. I said, guys, 201. If you give me an arcade cabinet, I will let you make as many arcade cabinets as you want.
Mhm.
And John and Ed promised me that they were only going to make 200 arcade cabinets. So when they pre-sold 10,000 cabinets,
Ooh.
I approached John and Ed and I was like, John, Ed, you said 200 cabinets, you're pre-selling 10,000.
Mm.
John and Ed said, don't worry, we're going to pay you.
Mm.
It went to the whole home system. I said, John, Ed, you guys never said anything about a home system. Don't worry, we're going to pay you.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, they're going to pay me. When we started number 2, they were like, don't worry, do number 2. And at the end of 2, we'll all settle up and you'll get all your money because you'll all do that. Close to the end of 2, one of the owners comes up to me and says, hey, Danny, do you have what John and Ed said in writing?
Oh. Yeah.
And I looked at the guy and I was like, no, but you can ask John and Ed.
Mhm.
And then that's when all the turmoil started because they didn't want to pay up.
That's unfortunate, man. Just
Yeah.
because,
And then, it was unfortunate that, yeah.
yeah, because then I mean, like I said, you get rid of characters that people loved and things like that. But also, it's like for y'all who were like, such a big. I mean, you're the reason the game exists. It's like
Yeah.
take
Well,
care of, take
it's
care of
pretty
them.
funny because the characters that I created, the characters that they excluded in number 3, are that is their logo. If you look at NetherRealm, it's Scorpion.
Uh-huh.
I created that character.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like I know somebody else takes credit for it because it's co-creator. You know what I mean? Because it's when we create stuff, it's because I'm not a programmer and I'm not an artist,
Hmm.
and I can only tell you what to do. It becomes a co-creation type
Yeah.
of thing. You know what I mean? So it gets kind of people kind of, but it's like the concept all came from me. So when I see that, I'm like, dude, that's pretty hilarious because it's like that's my concept, and that I really, you know,
I mean, it
and
was
I
even like,
know, I
yeah,
know when John and Ed look at it, and that they know who created that.
yeah. I mean, Scorpion was such a big piece that he even had his own movie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
mean, him and Sub-Zero, right? But I mean,
yeah,
you're the Sub-Zero as well,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. Those are yeah. So it's kind of funny that so they can't get rid of him. It's
mm.
just like, yeah, they'll never get rid of me.
Now, yeah, at some point though, hey, it got a little ugly there, right? And you moved on to promoting, what was it, a Bloodstorm, right? It was like a rival video game. Even the advertisement, right? I'm like, that's Johnny Cage, with the
Actually,
glasses.
the guy who the one of the artists on there, Alan Noon, worked on Mortal Kombat 2.
Mm,
And I got the job through John and Ed.
okay.
So John and Ed said, "Hey, Alan, remember Alan?" I was like, "Yeah, I haven't seen him in a while." And he's like, "Oh, he got a new job, but he wants you to do an advertisement for him."
Hmm.
And I was like, and I looked at him, I was like, uh, and I was like, "Can I do that?" And they were like, "As long as you don't use any property owned by Midway, you can do whatever you want."
Mm.
And it happened that most of the costumes from the first and second game all came from our closets. So it was like kind of like, okay, so I know that everybody, there's an urban legend that I got fired over that, but really that's all,
Mm.
that's all related to Mortal Kombat. The guy who did the artwork in it actually worked on Mortal Kombat too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So it was.
so
Hmm.
yeah, there's a tie in there.
Uh-huh. But and then moving on, after like Mortal Kombat, you see people start to do other things too. Like I'm wondering, and I was thinking about this, right? Because like the original Liu Kang was like in the WMAC Masters TV show.
Yeah.
Had you ever been approached to do something like that? Because that was like a real life kind of Mortal Kombat
We
TV show.
I was approached to doing that, but then they decided to sell it, and then that turned into Pokemon.
Oh,
They decided to go with Pokemon, do a Pokemon show.
huh.
Yeah, so kind of, which turned out wonderful for them because, Pokemon's super big.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, so it was, yeah,
Yeah, I remember that show. I'm like, oh, cool. It kind of like a, like, I mean, it was a little hokey, but I'm like, hey, it was kind of
yeah,
like a Mortal Kombat, in real life every week kind of thing, like a mix of that and like, I don't know, almost like pro wrestling because they had like the belt and everything,
yeah, it was
right?
pretty awesome. We, again, too, and myself, Hosung, and Liz, the original Sonya, got approached in England to do a version, a UK version of that while we were over there,
Mhm.
which didn't come true into fruition.
And just real quick to kind of tie up a few things here with Mortal Kombat. I do want to say like I'm glad y'all put it together because there were a lot of like rip off games or like similar games in the time and they just didn't really ever measure up. It was like every arcade had like so many fighting games, right? And some of them were just like complete rip offs of Mortal Kombat, right? But it just never was, you can still play Mortal Kombat, 1, Mortal Kombat 2 today, and I think you'll get more entertainment value than a lot of fighting games that were created, 10, 20, 30 years later, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a, you know, we were fortunate because, John being the lead, the creator of it, he always let the best idea, like no matter who came up with the idea, like be be in the game. If your idea was the best one, he'd be like, okay, your idea is going in the game.
mm,
I think now like a lot of people, from what it looks like, are like, oh no, I have my idea must be in the game and that's it.
mm,
So back in the day, you got the teams were smaller.
mm,
Now the hundreds of people on a team. Back then there was like, the actors who were coming up with the I came up with a majority of the special moves and the fatalities. Heck,
mm,
John and I came up with fatality. The idea of a fatality came up with John and I. Uh, so, you know, and then there were 5 programmers, 2 artists. So the team was really like 12 people
mm,
compared to now thousands of people working on a
right.
video game.
Yeah.
So it's very, you can keep everything, the ideas going in one direction as opposed to, you get a couple thousand people, ideas are going all over the place.
Too many cooks in the kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. All right, so I wanted to dig in a little bit, to your background, right? Because master isn't the title that you get just because you made it up, right? So Master Daniel Pesina, what's that all about, man? Talk to me about your martial arts history and when you started, what styles and all of that, and then what you're doing now.
Yeah. I started with judo and Shotokan karate in 1968.
Wow.
So yeah, a long time ago. And then 1974, I started with Kung Fu with Luha Bafai and Lama Kung Fu with Wei Lun Choi. Later
Mhm.
on, Dan Asano, Bruce Lee's student, would study with my master, that guy. So he was really good. He was a very good fighter.
Mhm.
And then in 1985, I got to go to mainland China. China opened up, and they were
Mhm.
allowing foreigners to come in to train in traditional and contemporary wushu. Wushu
Mhm.
means martial art. A lot of people think wushu is a style martial art, but wu means war, shu means art or play, like you know
Mhm.
to to play. So yeah, so a lot of people uh, confuse the wording on it. Uh,
Mhm.
they describe it as kung fu, and kung fu means skill and time. So if you're a chef, you have kung fu. If you're a car mechanic who's really good, you have kung fu.
Oh,
So if you're a guitar player who's really good, you have kung fu.
all right. Okay. I didn't know
So
that. Yeah.
yeah, so started doing that, and then the title master came with mind body connection. So, meaning saying like my techniques run as efficient as they can for me. Doesn't mean like I have any superpower or anything like that. It just means that for me and who I am, and when I throw a punch, I can maximize it, do it as efficiently as possible. Or if I do a kick or a punch or a throw or a choke or anything, it's always as efficient as it can be.
See. All right.
And so when you have that mind-body connection, uh, uh, not only can you run efficiently, but if you, it's man, how can you do it? You get very sensitive. Like if, once I touch an opponent, I can pretty much tell what they're going to do.
Mm.
So it's kind of, it's kind of like when you see Gracie Jiu-Jitsu guys, like
Yeah.
when they're wrestling, they know what move you're going to do. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, I could do that with not only moves, with punches and everything. I could usually tell what's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like when I used to wrestle, one good tip I was always told is don't look the guy in the eyes, right? Look at his hips because his hips are telling you where he's going to move next.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's like anticipating that next move. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You can really feel the weight shift, or, the human brain can really calculate a lot of stuff. It can really, you can tell by the way that they hold their body what weapons are available to fire, and so that way you can calculate what they're going to do and what is possible. So then all of a sudden what kind of is going to be happening.
Mm. Yeah. And so that's it's a long time to be doing martial arts, man. That's crazy.
Yeah,
You teach currently, right? Or
yeah. I
no?
teach currently out of Chicago, privates and semi-privates. I don't teach like a regular classes anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So usually all my clients, I call them clients, are have their own martial arts goal or have been studying martial arts for a long time. So I don't have any real beginners.
Mm.
And I think the person has been studying the least is like has been studying martial arts for like 9 years.
Okay.
So, and then I have some who've been studying martial arts like 30 years, 40 years. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
So you
and
don't
again, it's just trying to, because I'm not teaching them, I'm teaching them how to be more efficient, make their techniques efficient. I'm not trying to really teach them anything they don't know. I'm just making them aware of what how they can change their technique to become a little bit more deadly.
right. So like we're refining it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and to make them aware of what's available to them.
Mm-hmm.
When we're doing stuff like, if they're throwing a punch, how easily you can take the punch and change it, so all of a sudden you change the punch into a strike with this. So it's like, oh, you can do two strikes. So that way, when you're, instead of doing one punch, you're doing boom, and you can throw two strikes. So just little things like that.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Just tweaking their style just a little bit, and then sometimes you need that like outside the box kind of perspective, right? You've been doing something the same way all the time, and it's like, look, just try this, give it a shot, right? And
Yeah, yeah, it
you
makes
start
it
to see those eureka moments.
yeah, yeah, it really makes it an art, and it makes it your own too. So
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, because you were big into martial arts, and you know, at some point, in the early '90s, they started like, doing the UFC fights, man. I'm like, anybody, maybe you or maybe anybody in your circles ever tried to get into that because they were pulling people from all over.
when I was younger, I did Sanda, which is kind of like that.
Uh-huh.
But by the time UFC came out, most of the people like from the MK were already too old for that.
Mm.
We're in our 40s, so it was like, holy cow.
You were in your 40s when you were Johnny Cage?
No, I was when I was Johnny Cage, I was 30.
Yeah, because first UFC came out, I think, was it 90, like 93, around the
What
same time, right?
was it? 93? The first UFC? I thought it came out later. I don't know.
I believe the first one was 93. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. Let me double check.
No, it was
Yeah,
93.
93. Yeah, and that I
But
think.
but but you're right. But Mortal Kombat came out when we started Mortal Kombat. It was 1990.
Hmm,
So yeah, so 33. Yeah,
yeah.
but still that's a little. a little
It's a
old
little
for,
up there,
you
yeah.
know, coming into to that type of game. Usually that's for, you know, 20 to 35. So I would be
Mhm.
coming in on the end.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just wondering, because I'm like, I wonder if
It's
they
cool
reached
stuff.
out,
Yeah, it's cool
because
stuff. I like to watch it. It's cool sport.
for sure. Yeah, now it's like global phenomenon, but you know, back then it was like style versus style. Let's take a wrestler and put him against somebody who does karate, right? Let's
Yeah,
take this guy who created his own fighting system and put him against a sumo wrestler.
yeah,
So hey, that would have been a cool concept there for a video game as well, though, huh?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So with that being said, now your last name Pesina, man, you're Hispanic.
yeah. Latino,
Uh,
Mexicano.
all
My
right. What
parents
part?
are, my parents are from Mexico.
Yeah, my whole family's from Leon, Guanajuato.
Ah,
Uh,
compa. Yeah,
that's cool, man. So I didn't know, Johnny Cage was Mexican.
yeah, yeah. Raiden is Mexican too. Uh, Tobias is Ecuadorian. You know, Boone's Dominican. So we got a bunch of Latinos who made Mortal Kombat.
That's crazy, man. I never would have thought that, and like, it doesn't really like it shouldn't matter, but it's pretty cool in retrospect, like, hey, wait a minute, this is one of us, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um,
But it shouldn't matter. But it is something for us to really, as Latinos, to look at, because a lot of, a lot of that stuff is forgotten, because we were pioneers. I was the
mhm,
first I was the first professional stunt person to fight design a live video game. So being the first person to do that, and to being a Latino to do that.
mhm.
So it's not only the first person, but the first Latino to do that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool
that's
stuff, man.
something. That's something for just our heritage.
Uh-huh.
Sure, we're all American, but America's a melting pot.
Yep.
You know, my dad became a citizen because of the Korean War. He
Mm,
served 2 terms in the Korean War, and he came back, and he got a citizenship through that.
yeah.
Yeah,
And a lot of people, I'm sure can relate to that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I like I said, I think it's kind of like it's funny, like if you think of Johnny Cage, like I think like, oh, it's like, he was like the white boy movie actor, right? That was his character, right? He was
Yeah,
like the preppy white boy that was really cocky.
yeah.
But that's crazy. I never thought like, when I was a kid, like, oh, he's got to be, Mexican or anything like that. But
Yeah.
I think that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, now the truth was that he was the cocky Mexican guy.
Yeah, right. Put
Yeah,
some put some green on that outfit, we'd be all right.
yeah, yeah,
And so you grew up over here then in the US, or did you
yeah.
grow up in Mexico a little
I
bit?
was born in, me and my brothers. I have 3 brothers born in the U.S. My dad was born in Tampico. My mom was in Matamoros. So still got family in Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
Tejas. So haven't been there in a while, but when I was a kid, every year go see grandma down
Uh-huh.
in Mexico. you know,
What's your favorite Mexican dish, man? Homemade. What does grandma or mom make the best?
man, everything. My mom, man, and not anymore. My mom's gonna be 94 this year, but my dad's 98 years old.
Oh man.
So,
Oh, so
but
you got both of them with you still. That's great, man.
yeah, tamales. My mom, even right now, my mom still once in a while does tortillas from hand, by
Yeah,
hand still.
yeah.
Yes, she's hardcore. If they hold this still by hand, she won't.
Uh-huh.
So she doesn't go to the store to buy any of that.
Right. Yeah, we make do with what's given to us, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm. That's cool, man. Like I cook a lot, so I can appreciate that. Like I'm not the type that I'm gonna go buy like a little container of guacamole, right? I'm like, dude, I'll make it myself and it'll be better.
yeah. Actually, the Raiden makes a really good guacamole.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Dude, like these are all the
My mom, for some reason, my mom makes, I never got it. I could make it okay, but Carlos, man, he could make some really good. guac, man.
Hey, there we
You
go.
get a chance, try it.
Yeah, man. Um, Now, other than the gaming and the martial arts, right? What else would you say would be some highlights of your long career at this point? You mentioned stunts and things like that, right? Did you work on like some like films or TV shows and things like that?
Yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles too.
You're nailing all my favorites here, man.
Yeah, and I did a little bit in number three too. Uh, some independent movies.
Hmm.
Nowadays, I just love martial arts, do a lot of martial arts still. You know,
Hmm.
I still like to practice. I'm more of a hands-on teacher. Like I don't, I don't sit there and teach. I work out alongside, not as hard, but still, move with them every day.
Hmm.
Don't like to get thrown too much anymore, but I can still take a fall.
Yeah,
You know,
that's cool, man.
yeah.
And do you ever just kind of sit there and reflect, like, man, all of this, all these opportunities, martial arts is what did it for me.
Nah, not really reflect because I love it so much and practice it every day.
Hmm.
But uh, my mom is like, my mom and dad are like, oh my God, that's such a waste of a college education. Doing martial arts when even until like 5 years ago, my mom would be like, when you gonna get a real job? I'm like, holy cow,
Uh,
paying a mortgage, I could pay a mortgage, I could, and do my own thing. I could help them out. And they still don't think that I have a real job. You
right?
know,
It's always mom's always gonna be the harshest critic, right?
yeah, yeah, and it's pretty funny because my dad, you're a Latino, so you could probably relate. My dad still like shakes my hand with like a $10 bill in his hand, like slipping me a 10 or a five. It's pretty funny, like I'm like 12 years old.
Right. Yeah.
It's
That's funny.
hilarious.
That's
God
uh-huh.
bless him. I love him.
So what would you say then are like obviously you mentioned like Ninja Turtles and things like that. Anything else where you're like, man, this is like the some of the coolest stuff I've ever done, right? Mortal Kombat, Ninja Turtles, right? What else would you include there? Like this is part of the one of the coolest things I've ever done.
You know what is really cool is like my brother and I are in a few days are going to go to Colombia, Bogota, together to do an event. And this is going to be his first event in South America.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool to go and see, not only a different country, but a South American country where we're basically cousins. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they not only the same language, the same food, the same everything. There's a twist on it, but it
Yeah.
is the same thing.
Uh-huh.
And they're just like us. They're geeks like us, and and it's just to hang out with them. Yeah, it is really, really cool to just go there and just talk to them and to realize that we're really all the same. We're just all gamers, we are
Mhm.
really the same.
Yeah. And I think it's nice to see that you've embraced like, hey, this is my legacy, right? Because a lot of people like I don't know, you used to hear it all the time with like bands that were like on VH1s, like, you know, what do they call it? Like behind the music kind of thing, like their big thing that got them to the show, right? Their big hit that got them to the show. I hate that song. I never want to hear it again, right? And so you could be one of those people where it's like, I'm tired of hearing about Mortal Kombat. I'm tired of hearing about this and that,
Now,
but you've really seen to lean into it and embrace it and be like, this is my legacy here.
yeah, I never get tired of hearing their story of how it impact them. How people are like, even the music. I don't even get tired of music because they
Yeah.
play it all day long. I could listen to it all day long. That
Mm-hmm.
I just don't get tired of it, and I
Uh-huh.
don't get tired of people telling me how they used to run home from school and play it with their friends, or how they used to get in trouble, or how they used to put a jacket over their controller so nobody would learn how to do the special moves,
Uh-huh.
or just any all their memories. Because really, going back to these events, it just rekindles all their memories. When they see me, because it was a live video game, all of a sudden all this history and nostalgia comes running back to them when they see my face or see my brother's face, or any of the original Mortal Kombat people, from 1 and 2.
Hmm. And
We're gifted like that.
has anyone ever told you like a really interesting story that you remember it, like you remember it to this day because it was so unique or anything like that?
Uh, Man, there's tons of stories. I mean, really, there's tons of stories. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, from hearing, I did an event in Rome, and there was a gentleman who showed up who gave me 12-inch Mortal Kombat dolls, his own from when he was a kid,
Oh,
and then he told me that he traveled 12 hours on a bus and a couple of trains, that he
jeez.
lives in Germany, and this was the closest I was ever going to be to him. So he took a 12-hour trip to come see me for half an hour and then go all the way back home.
That's dedication.
Man, that's just I just signed a bunch of stuff for him, and all he wanted to do was give me those action figures. That was it.
That's cool.
So I just signed a bunch of stuff with them, as much as I could, gave him a hug, and just, I was like,
Mhm.
thanks for coming out. And he was like, thanks. Spent half an hour with them, then gone. Uh, One time I'm at my martial arts school teaching. All of a sudden, this big guy comes in. He's like, who's the headmaster here?
Uh-huh.
And I look at him and I was like, I am. And I thought we were going to fight, because he's a big guy. And when people come in like that, you could be rocking and rolling with them.
Yeah.
And I was like, I am. And he looks at me. He goes, "You're Master Daniel Pesina. Oh my God." And he comes in. He's a guy from a big guy from Australia. I had a layover in O'Hare. And so he took a cab to the school on the chance that I would be there. He had a little poster to sign. I signed it for him, took a picture, and then he went all the way back to O'Hare. But the dude all of a sudden just started. All of a sudden, he was like 9 years old,
Yeah,
and
he
this
reverted
guy
back.
was
Yeah.
jacked. This
Uh-huh.
guy was freaking jacked. You know
Uh-huh.
what I mean? I was like, oh man, this is going to be interesting. But all of a sudden, he was like, oh my God. And he's like, his voice went really high, and all of a sudden, he's just like, oh, he couldn't believe it. And so, man, it was a really good feeling. But it
Yeah.
was like really, people just sometimes flip out.
Yeah, and it's got to be kind of crazy. Like it might trip you out sometimes because you were on the actual arcade machine, the on the side of the cabinet, right? And so you probably have people that like have you tattooed on them and stuff like that. You ever ran
I
into that?
I've signed a couple of tattoos of Scorpion
Uh,
where they asked me to do it in a Sharpie, and then later on I'm going to go get it inked in.
okay.
Oh, yeah. I got on the side of the cabinet. What happened was John called me up like late at night. He was like, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow morning?" And I was like, "I don't know. What am I doing?" He was like, "Come in. I'm going to put you on the side of the cabinet."
Cool.
And I was like, "What?" He's like, "I'm going to have a photographer come in and you're going to shoot some pictures." He goes, "You're the only one who believed in this game. And
Mm,
you and me created this game, and I want to say thank you for doing this, and I want to put you on the side of the cabinet."
nice.
And so I was like, "Thanks, John." And so I showed up next morning, took a bunch of pictures, and they put me on the side of the cabinet.
Nice. Cool, man. Well, that's I think Mortal Kombat 1, right? It's the Mortal
Yeah,
Kombat 1 cabinet. Yeah.
yeah.
Um and it's a pretty cool shot too, man. But you know what? Yeah, I want to just check in and see if, where can people find you if they want to, check out your what you're up to, right? If they want to check your social media, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, uh, Master Pesina. I'm on Instagram, Master D Pesina, only because I have Master Pesina, but I forgot the
The
password.
login, yeah.
Yeah, the login. So it's funny because I want to log in, but they are like, change the login, but you need the last login. And I'm like, dude, I forgot that login. So they
Yeah.
won't let you get back in. So I just created a new account. So,
All
but
right.
that one's, you could reach, message me there. Also, email is masterpesina@gmail. If anybody just wants to say hi or ask a question or anything like that, I'm, open to questions or comments or anything like that.
Sure.
Or, people reach out, just have something like that. If they need an autograph, please go to an event just because it's, I'm not, I don't have a whole team behind me. So
Right.
it's almost impossible for me to sign something and get it in the mail. Your
Hmm.
best bet is just come hang out at an event and
Yeah.
chat, and get whatever
And
you need to sign
they can
there.
find those on you advertise them on your social media. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
And two, just get in there. You just kind of, you don't even have to buy anything. You can hang out at the table and
Yeah,
talk,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time, man. I really, cool kind of going down memory lane and then hearing about the little behind the scenes and everything. And, what I've noticed, and one of the things I wanted to point out to you is that you seem to be very good to your fans. And I'm sure they really appreciate that and show you that love and respect back.
Yeah, yeah. They're good to me. They're
Yeah.
not fans, they're friends.
Hey, there you go. All that perspective. It's all about perspective there, right? And
Yeah.
that's a good perspective to have. So definitely appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, man, wish you best of luck and everything else you got going on.
Thank you. Take care of each other.
Absolutely. And for everybody listening at home, I appreciate you. Thank you. Fuck you and good night.